Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into VeChain today. You know, the enterprise blockchain platform. It's been really focused on supply chain stuff for years. But now we're tracking this pretty massive strategic shift they're making toward large-scale global sustainability. It feels like it's less about the usual crypto hype and more about this idea they call Web3 for better.
Yeah, it's a really compelling deep dive, I think, because they're not starting from scratch. They've actually got a major head start. They already have that core infrastructure in place and some pretty critical commercial partnerships, too. So our mission here is to figure out how they're taking that existing foundation and building something, well, potentially much grander, this blockchain biosphere for sustainability.
Right. So for anyone maybe just catching up, let's quickly nail down the technical snapshot. What's the bedrock here? What makes VeChain, uniquely set up for enterprise adoption, especially when it comes to stability and predictable cost?
Well, it really comes down to two key design choices they made early on. First is the dual token system. They deliberately separate VET, that's the value transfer medium, the investment asset, from VTHO. And VTHO is the gas token. It's basically the cost of using the blockchain. This separation is fundamental because it insulates those transaction fees from the wild swings of the crypto market.
Okay. So say a big international company running maybe hundreds of thousands of transactions daily, they don't have to stress that a sudden jump in the VT price will just paralyze their operations. That kind of predictability must be absolutely non-negotiable for serious enterprise planning.
Absolutely. I mean, enterprises demand that cost stability above almost anything else. It's crucial. The second choice is their consensus mechanism, proof of authority, or POA. Now, it's known for being fast, designed to be scalable, and pretty low cost. But that's where the first sort of critical question comes up for you, our listener. POA works because it relies on a relatively small set of known trusted authority nodes. That makes it fast and efficient, sure, but isn't that traditionally seen as a trade-off, like sacrificing maximum decentralization?
Yeah, that's the classic challenge, isn't it? How does VeChain answer the critics who might say that efficiency comes at the cost of, trustlessness or decentralization?
They try to solve this, or at least address it, with their evolution to POA 2.0. See, historically, blockchains always wrestle with this speed versus data finality trade-off. Finality meaning the absolute guarantee that once a block is confirmed, it can never be modified or reversed. POA 2.0 is designed to combine the strengths of the sort of probabilistic guarantees you find in older models like proof of work with the guaranteed block finality you get from Byzantine fault tolerance or BFT architectures.
Okay, so essentially they're aiming for that guaranteed finality, which you need for things like regulatory compliance, audit trails, while still keeping the speed and, importantly, the low energy use that comes with POA. And speaking of energy, the stats we've seen on their infrastructure efficiency are actually kind of wild.
They are genuinely surprising, yeah. VeChainThor is consistently ranked as one of the most energy-efficient blockchains out there. We're talking tiny numbers, like 0.0000216 kilowatt hours of electricity per transaction. And the total estimated carbon footprint for the entire core network, those 101 authority nodes, is calculated to be only around 4.46 tons of CO2 emissions per year.
Wow, 4.46 tons. That's basically the footprint of maybe 2 or 3 average American homes for a year. It's incredibly low. So if the efficiency and speed benefits of POA are really that massive, why haven't more big layer 1 platforms moved towards similar sort of enterprise-focused consensus? What's the hidden trade-off they're accepting for getting this level of efficiency?
Well, it often comes back to that perception of centralization we just talked about. That's usually the trade-off. While VeChain has engineered technical solutions like POA 2.0 to boost security and finality, other ecosystems really prioritize maximizing the number of validators across the globe, for maximum decentralization. Even if that means higher energy use or maybe slower block times, VeChain basically accepts a limited vetted validator pool to deliver that enterprise-grade performance.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, moving beyond the sort of deep tech layer, let's look at the features businesses actually use. You mentioned transaction fee delegation earlier. Why is that so essential for actually getting, say, millions of ordinary consumers using Web3 applications?
It's the barrier remover. Yeah. It's absolutely key. Transaction fee delegation lets the company running the app, cover the gas costs of VTHO for the end user. So this means a customer can, interact with the app, use a verifiable digital product passport, scan a QR code, without ever needing to set up a crypto wallet, buy VET, or even understand what gas fees are. It makes the whole Web3 part essentially invisible.
Right, and that transparency, that ease of use, is clearly driving some of their current successes.
Yeah.
We see these major applications already live, like the Walmart China blockchain traceability platform.
Right.
What is it, over 30 product categories now?
Yeah, things like fresh meat, rice. And the key there is the verified data. It's not just a fancy digital label. It's verifiable sourcing info, logistics tracking, inspection reports, all that builds real consumer trust.
Yeah.
And similarly, you have DNV's My Story platform using VeChain. It offers digital assurance, letting brands share the authentic, provable journey of their product directly with consumers.
Okay, so this kind of sets the stage perfectly for their bigger vision, this blockchain biosphere for sustainability. It's pitched as this modular framework tackling massive global problems. But what are the fundamental flaws in our current systems, economic supply chain systems that Web3 is actually trying to fix here?
If you really look at why sustainability initiatives often stumble or fail, they usually fall into maybe three main buckets. First, there's just a lack of trust and proof of authenticity. Greenwashing is everywhere. We often lack real confidence that claims about emissions or product origins are truly accurate. Second, you've got big issues around data ownership and privacy. Companies, especially competitors or partners in a supply chain, are often really reluctant to share sensitive data. And that creates these massive blind spots, these visibility gaps.
Okay, trust and data access. And the third one, this feels like the most maybe philosophical challenge, the one that really ties into that Web3 for better idea.
Exactly. It's the lack of attribution of value to externalities. In traditional finance, positive sustainable actions like preventing waste, choosing ethical suppliers, they often go completely unrewarded or at least unquantified in a meaningful way. And conversely, negative impacts like pollution, they aren't always penalized accurately or immediately. The whole point of this biosphere concept is really to try and change that fundamental calculation.
Wow. Okay, so you're suggesting the biosphere isn't just about tracking stuff better on a blockchain. It's about fundamentally redefining what we even mean by value, taking those societal and environmental externalities and making them quantifiable, tradable, maybe even monetizable within the ecosystem itself.
That's precisely the goal. The modular biosphere is the structure designed to actually operationalize that redefinition. You have the layer 1 infrastructure, the blockchain, IoT, AI connections supporting numerous separate but interconnected ecosystems. And each ecosystem is dedicated to solving a specific ESG challenge. Could be fashion waste, could be energy grid emissions, you name it.
All right, let's make that really concrete then. Let's look at some of those specific ecosystem case studies they've outlined. How about we start with the secondhand market for fashion? The pain points here seem huge sustainability, obviously, but also really low resale rates for luxury goods, often because authentication is so expensive.
Yeah, the problem often isn't the desire to resell, it's the whole process. Only about, 15% of resaleable luxury items actually get resold each year? And a big reason is that manual third-party authentication. It's slow, it's costly, and it even generates its own shipping emissions, sending items back and forth. The VeChain solution here integrates the physical item with an NFT, which acts as its unique digital passport.
But how does an NFT truly replace, an expert physically looking at the stitching of the materials?
Well, the product gets tagged right at the point of manufacturing. That physical tag links directly to the NFT on the blockchain, and that NFT immutably records the item's entire history, materials used, any maintenance repairs done over time. So the buyer, using just their smartphone, can scan the physical tag and instantly verify all that data against the blockchain record. Because the origin data and all subsequent actions are digitally signed and confirmed, you essentially eliminate the need for that expensive, centralized authenticator. That removes a massive cost barrier and makes resale much more viable, profitable, and accessible.
That's clever. It directly ties the environmental benefit, less shipping, less waste, into the actual economics of resale. Okay, cool. Next up, EV battery management. This feels like a really critical long-term sustainability challenge.
Oh, definitely. This hits the absolute core of the circular economy problem. Lithium batteries, as you know, have a pretty high initial carbon footprint from manufacturing. And the recycling rates, they're abysmal, often less than 5%. Plus, now you have new government mandates popping up, like the EU requiring specific amounts of recycled content in new batteries. OEMs desperately need total life cycle traceability.
And I imagine without something like blockchain, tracking all those complex components through production, first use, maybe second life applications, and then finally recycling, it must be almost impossible.
Precisely. It's incredibly complex. So here, the NFT battery passport is the proposed solution. It tracks every single stage, the initial recycled content used in manufacturing, performance data during its primary use in the car, then potentially its deployment in a second life application, maybe as part of a home energy storage system. And then finally, confirmation of its end-of-life recycling. This doesn't just help the OEM meet compliance rules, it actually maximizes the reuse of valuable materials, directly lowering the overall carbon impact. Again, quantifying those positive externalities.
Okay, makes sense. Our third example, this supply chain at the edge, or SC at E, focusing on spare parts. This one feels maybe the most radical, because it seems to completely flip the traditional logistics model on its head using industrial 3D printing.
Yeah, this one tackles two huge issues simultaneously. The massive emissions footprint of traditional logistics, which is something like 8% of global emissions.
Yeah.
And also the enormous amount of working capital that manufacturers have tied up, just warehousing spare parts all over the world, waiting for them to be needed.
So the idea is, instead of stockpiling millions of physical parts, the OEM just securely stores digital blueprints.
Exactly. Digital blueprints of the parts. Then, when a customer somewhere needs that specific part, the OEM securely transfers the digital blueprint via the blockchain. It goes to a certified local service bureau, basically a specialized 3D printing facility located near the end user. The part is then 3D printed on demand, just in time. The result is potentially transformative. Delivery could be in, say, 12 to 24 hours instead of weeks, massive emission savings by cutting out air freight, and dramatically reduced working capital costs for the manufacturer because they don't need huge physical inventories anymore. It turns inventory liability into a secure, verifiable data asset.
Wow. Okay, all three of those examples really show how the tech could quantify and maybe even reward more sustainable actions at the enterprise level. But this kind of collaboration, especially for the broader biosphere, it needs individual motivation too, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the VeChain renaissance, that's what they called it, and the recent tokenomics update. It seems aimed at getting individuals more involved.
Yeah, that Web3 for better vision really only works if it scales right down to rewarding the individual person, the customer who chooses to recycle properly or takes public transport or buys verifiably sustainable goods. The mechanism they're exploring is a mix of things. Fungible reward tokens, maybe non-fungible digital badges or achievements. Think NFTs and gamification techniques to drive loyalty and actual participation in these ecosystems.
Okay. But the recent community discussions around the VET and VTHO tokenomics, specifically the changes impacting VTHO generation, it signals a shift away from rewarding just passively holding VET if you're not running a node, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't that risk alienating some of the platform's maybe early, more passive investors, the ones who provided stability back in the early days?
That's exactly the core tension they're navigating right now. It's a really tricky balance. The decision, as proposed, definitely signals a strategic move. They want to reward active participation more heavily. That means people staking VET to help secure the network, or those participating in DAO governance, voting, development. The stated goal is to ensure the model's long-term sustainability by directing more rewards towards those actively contributing to the ecosystem's health and growth, rather than just passively accumulating VTHO from locked assets.
Okay, so the message is if you want to earn rewards, you need to be actively helping build or secure the ecosystem. But does that raise the barrier to entry too high for newcomers, people who maybe just want to hold a smaller amount of VET and participate?
That potential barrier was definitely a major point raised in the community feedback, and that's why the current proposals are exploring options like creating new, lower tiers for VET staking. I think numbers as low as maybe 10,000 VET were discussed, specifically to keep things accessible for newcomers who do want to stake their assets and earn some of those active rewards. It really seems to be about finding that balance, properly rewarding those who secure and operate the chain while still keeping the door open for grassroots involvement and growth.
Right. This has been a really comprehensive look at an enterprise platform that seems genuinely focused on utility over hype. Let's try and summarize the key takeaways for you, the listener.
Okay, so VeChain has built its foundation on high-efficiency infrastructure. That's the POA 2.0 consensus and the dual token model, VET-VTHO. This provides the cost stability and the data finality that global businesses really need. That's step one. Now, that foundation is being used to build out their larger vision, the blockchain biosphere for sustainability, which is this modular framework designed to enable these interconnected sustainability ecosystems. We saw examples with the digital passports for fashion, EV battery tracking, and the 3D printing for spare parts.
Yeah, and the engine that's supposed to drive all of this forward is the updated tokenomics model. It's shifting focus to incentivize active contribution from both big companies and individuals, aiming to multiply the impact of their sustainable actions.
And critically, I think what the sources really reveal is that the most profound transformation they're aiming for here, it's a fundamental redefinition of value. This blockchain biosphere concept, attempts to shift how success itself is measured, moving beyond just the traditional economic metrics, cash flow, profit margin, to actually incorporate those societal and environmental externalities, things like carbon savings, waste reduction, ethical conduct, directly into the operational model and the incentive structures.
Okay, that leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you to mull over. If Web3 platforms like this do successfully manage to quantify and reward these broader, more comprehensive externalities, how might this new, more holistic concept of value change not just how global supply chains work, but maybe how you personally measure the success or the sustainability of the very next consumer decision you make? Something to think about next time you're deciding what to buy.